So I guess the next part that we should go into is how do these trusts, how are these trusts typically transferred to the U.S.? Like, do you see a lot of kind of migration from these offshore jurisdictions to the U.S., or was it mostly kind of decanting? And then in regards to that, are there different kind of rationales for doing one versus the other?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've seen a number of different approaches. I think the most common one, and I'll get into why this is the most common approach that I see, is to really do a migration to Delaware through the appointment of a Delaware trustee. And so in that situation, ideally, you've got an existing offshore trust that has a mechanism to appoint a successor trustee. And ideally, there's no restriction in the document on where that successor trustee can be located. And oftentimes what I find with these offshore trusts is that most of them have pretty modern provisions that contemplate allowing you to move the trust to another jurisdiction, including outside of the jurisdiction where the trust started, and includes provisions that allows you to apply the law of a new jurisdiction if you appoint a trustee in another jurisdiction. So the most common approach that I see is a migration that's due to the ability to appoint a trustee in Delaware and then utilize one of the provisions in the trust agreement to then say that Delaware law shall govern the administration of the trust once the Delaware trustee is appointed. And once that occurs, once Delaware law governs the administration of that offshore trust that has now been moved in to the United States through the appointment of a Delaware trustee, now you have access to the various Delaware statutes and methods to modify or change the trust if we want to update its provisions or modernize the provisions further.
Got it. 所以刚才 Daniel 说，我就问 Daniel 问题是说，最近就是离岸信托要搬进美国的时候，他们正常会是用刚才John 所说的就是 decanting 的方法，还是他们会用另外一个方法叫迁移，或是类似一个信托的移移这样子，就是把一个信托从离岸的可能离岸的设立地把它换 trustee， 把那个受托人改成一个美国当地的受托人这样子。那比如说做成一个Delaware 的受托公司这样子。那如果一旦换了以后，这个信托也是让这个信托里面的条文也写说，可以去变更这个 trustee， 然后呢变更成非这个国家的 trustee 的话，那我们正常可能会用这样子的方法，一旦变更了以后，法律也会跟着这个 trustee 的变更去变更成美国的当地的法律为执行的法律这样子。那就是这个迁移的过程完成之后，如果信托合约里面的内容需要修改的话，就可以用 Delaware 的法律去直接去做相当修改的动作这样子。对，那接下来我主要跟他讨论就是说，那如果这个信托合约没有这样子的条文的话，那他会建议用怎么样子的方法Daniel, and I guess the next question that I thought of was that if the trust agreement itself doesn't kind of specifically specify that a change of trustee, especially to a different country, is allowed or allowable, then would the decanting be another method to complete such a sort of migration of the trust, or kind of are there some other methods as well?
Yes. So if the trust has, some provisions where maybe it's not clear, regarding how easy it is to appoint a Delaware trustee or move the trust to another jurisdiction, one possibility, may be to have the existing offshore trustee agree to decant the assets of the existing trust into a new Delaware trust that is created or declared. And so the decanting is, as you probably know, or was probably part of the previous presentation, I believe, is really pouring over all the assets from the existing trust into the new trust that's created. And so that can be a useful tool if there's some question about the provisions of the trust agreement. Mm-hmm. There are a couple, potential concerns when you're dealing with that situation, when you're looking to decant, as opposed to just appointing the trustee and modifying the trust under Delaware law. One that I encounter a lot is that the offshore trustee, knowing that they are no longer going to be serving as trustee of the trust, may be reluctant to exercise its authority to decant into a new trust that's created in Delaware. Sometimes they're willing to, and we don't get a lot of pushback, but I've had several instances over the years where they simply do not want to take the extra step of exercising their discretion to decant into a new trust. Their thinking is, if they're no longer going to be serving as trustee, then they don't see any benefit to them in taking that extra step to help out the client and get the trust to the United States. The other potential issue is there is some law out there in the U.S. or some guidance that suggests that if you do a decanting and you change certain provisions pursuant to the decanting, if certain provisions of the new trust differ from provisions of the old trust, then the new trust may not be considered a continuation of the existing trust and may be considered the settling of a brand new trust, which could have tax consequences associated with it. Tax consequences that might not be associated with simply moving the existing trust to Delaware and modifying the trust under Delaware law.
好，那刚才我就问 Daniel 这个关于 decanting 的问题，这样就是说，如果这个信托合约里面的条文没有很清楚的写说，他可以把任职的受托人直接换成Delaware 的受托人的话，那在这样子的情况下Daniel 会有怎么样子的建议？那他就是说，除了这个迁移这个 migration， 就是直接换 trustee 这样子的，直接换受托人这样子的方法，那还有另外一个方法就是 decanting 这样。那对于 decanting 来说的话，他觉得decanting 可能会有就是有一些相关的困难，那这些可能也是相关的会计师或是律师需要去注意的地方这样子。那第一点就是说，在 decanting 的过程中，因为他不是把原有的受托人直接换掉这样子，他其实是要让旧的受托人跟新的受托人去建造一个关系，是说这个旧的受托人去把原有在这个信托旧信托的资产等于是转移到这个新信托受托人的手上这样子。那这个转移的过程中，其实旧的受托人不一定会这么愿意的去帮忙这样子，因为很多时候这些旧的受托人如果是一个离岸信托，然后他们也管理时间有一定的时间了，然后他们可能收费也是算蛮高的，他们可能就不愿意这么轻易的去放开这样子的客人这样子，所以这个中间就会有很多相关的沟通。那当然他们也不一定会很直接的去说他们不愿意去放开这样子信托，但他们可能会去说这里面有一些法律的考量，或是说有一些不同国家法律的一些细节要去考虑这样子，那可能就是新旧受托公司还有中间的双方的律师要去做相关的讨论，才有可能去完成这样子比较困难的过程这样子。那第二点是说，如果这个 decanting 的过程中等于新的信托跟旧的信托的条文 有相关的不同的点，就是假设说你新的信托跟旧的信托等于已经长起来不太一样了，那这样子可能会有一些相关的税务风险这样子。那他是说，如果是迁移来说的话，大部分税务的考量可能会稍微简单一点但是如果真的没有办法换到受托人 ，decanting 也是一个方式，但是要非常注意新的信托合约跟旧的信托合约是不是有这些重要的不同点这样子，因为如果它不同点太多的话，可能会被视为是另外一种赠与这样子，那可能会有相关的不管是赠与税还是法律的费用这样子。对，